May the 4th, 2022. Yes, okay, today I want to get into an issue that kind of popped up in the evening of the 2nd of May here. And basically that was the leak of a draft of Justice Alito's opinion on the Mississippi abortion case. It seems to indicate the concurrence of 5 justices, so it seems like that it effectively would be an overturn of the Roe v. Wade decision of 1973. And it's a fairly strongly worded position, which is, his own. And I guess we can get into a little bit of how this goes. The presumption at this point is that a clerk for one of the 3 liberal justices are the ones that probably leak this material, or I guess it's always possible that it's somebody else. And we can get into that in a little bit. But this has caused a major stir, because I think people were thinking that there would be a favorable decision for the Alabama law, but we didn't know exactly how far it would go. And it looks like it's going to go all the way to at least in terms of, eliminating Roe v. Wade, and therefore allowing the states to have their own provisions on this subject. So, and this is a major development. Of course, it impacts during an election year here in the midterm elections, which is another thing. So I want to kind of analyze this whole subject a little bit and see what kind of consequences we think will come from this. By the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe. I could use all the subscribers I get. I'm only 33 for that magic 100. We'll see, something good is supposed to happen then. And of course, give me a like. That helps out with the algorithm, get it out to more people. And you can, of course, ring the bell for notifications. And of course, comments are appreciated. I always like to see any feedback if anybody has any opinions. So this is a pretty big development, and as everybody says, it's very unprecedented. The Supreme Court has been fairly good at keeping its work secret until it's officially released, until they finally ironed it out. Because after all, this is just a draft. And I think there's 2 significant things in it. But the biggest thing is that, as I understand it, here's the way I think it goes in the Supreme Court. Once you have hear a case, you have to have like 4 justices, I think, have to agree that for a case to be heard, that's worth being heard. And then once they hear the case, they basically decide, which way they're going to go on the issue, and then somebody is picked by the Chief Justice then to write up that opinion. It seems as if the Chief Justice is not on board with overturning Roe v. Wade, at least in its entirety, and at least at this time, and therefore he picked Associate Justice Alito, who's a strong advocate of pro-life, I think, and to write the opinion. And essentially, I think is what's happened is the following: the original. There was a ruling that was I'm not a big law guy, so I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but I always called it the Missouri Compromise back around, was it in the early 90s, where they actually allowed states to restrict abortion more than had been the case under the original Roe decision. And the idea was that the viability of the unborn baby would be the criteria for which they would be which they would allow. In other words, if the baby is not viable, the court was going to allow them to continue with having abortions. But if the baby was viable, it would be all right for the state to ban it. Now, but what I'm getting at is it didn't say the state had to, which is another level of this debate. And of course, if Roe v. Wade is, well, we can get into that when we see what the results of this decision is. But the battle will not be over no matter what happens. Let's put it that way, regardless of what side anybody's on. And so anyhow, that was what happened then. But at that time, there were more restrictive rules that were passed that basically said something like 20-some weeks. After that, you can't do it in some states. In other states, your left-wing states have been pushing the other way, almost to the point of maybe after the baby is born, you can just make a decision then. Do you really want it or not? So that's absurd, but that's what literally they haven't done that yet. But the idea that aborting a baby right before birth at full term is any different from killing the baby after it's born, in my opinion, is absurd, obviously. I mean, that's insane. But nonetheless, that's the way some of these people think. Well, anyhow, this decision, they got down to, well, basically, Mississippi passed a law which said, rolled it back to 15 weeks, which basically, I don't think 15 weeks the baby is viable at that point to survive autonomously. And I guess the decision was, on the other hand, a lot of people think that at least the abortion should be restricted very early. I mean, of course, the pro-life people, full scale, restrict it totally. There's and of course that gets at a wide variety of issues. And I'm trying to get into all that deal. But at any rate, the court apparently looked at this thing, decided that they were going to rule in favor of the Mississippi law, and then looked at, well, what justification can we do for this? I mean, to actually pick an actual point in time. By analogy, it's a little bit like the gun controllers that want to ban certain magazine capacities, but the question is, why so many rounds rather than some other number of rounds? I mean, why is 10 magic or some other number, right? Why not go ahead and have 30 or why have any ban at all? I mean, that gets into the Second Amendment issue. But the same kind of thing is here. Why? And so I think even Kavanaugh was raising that issue in his oral arguments. So essentially, I apparently decided, well, if they're going to rule in favor of the Mississippi law, they might as well just go the whole distance and overturn Roe completely. Basically, the decision is really a case of extreme judicial activism back in '73, and it's caused a lot of turmoil ever since then by taking it away from the people and the state legislatures and making it that the federal courts have to continue to rule on this. And I think that's another reason why the court probably wants to go that way. I mean, is in addition to having a pro-life sentiment on the part of the 5 justices that are ruling that way, and I even tend to think that even Roberts is pro-life in principle. But there's always a question, and I've raised the question itself, is there's a difference between what is immoral and what is illegal. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world that I consider to be immoral. A lot of people consider to be immoral, but they aren't illegal. Okay. And so this is one of those kind of situations. When does life as a conscious, self-aware being begin? Is it literally at conception? Is it somewhere in the midterm? Is it literally birth? Birth makes no sense to me at all, by the way. I think it has to be somewhere either. Anyway, I don't get into my opinions on that subject. The point is, I definitely am for overturning Roe because it's bad constitutional law, and it will let us have a free debate over these issues. And obviously, overturning Roe does not ban abortion in the country. It will effectively ban it in some states because some states have actually passed laws saying that if it was overturned, then it will be banned in those states or restricted in various ways. Okay, and there's all kinds of nuances between are there any exceptions for rape, incest, and that sort of thing, or no exceptions at all, and you get what I mean. All those subjects. So the point is, those laws are already on the books in some places. Other ones may be passed after that, but there'll obviously be many states in the country, particularly those controlled by Democrats. Your Californias, your West Coast states, your Northeast states, and Illinois and other states, probably Colorado and definitely in New Mexico will still have legal abortions, and obviously people will be able to go across the borders and get one there. Although for the poorest people, there will be a question of expense. Okay, so it doesn't really ban it, but it does allow states and returns it to the people at the state level to make their own decisions. That's what is in this draft opinion. And the fact that 5 justices have pretty much voted to overturn Roe completely, unless they back off, unless the furor causes them to chicken out, if you will, under pressure, presumably they're going to go forward with it. Okay? And so the only issue is exactly what the final language will be, which will be different, obviously. And there'll probably be some concurrences with some people, and then there are going to be dissenting opinions by at least potentially 4 justices. Because presumably Roberts is not on board with going the full distance. However, he may concur that the Mississippi law is still valid at the 15-week point. It's possible he will come out as a moderate on this. I mean, we don't know his position because we don't have any leak of his draft, okay? But at any rate, that's kind of just running through the situation on that. And, of course, we already had instant protests. So it's obvious that the administration and the pro-abortion movement were well aware this leak was coming, okay? And they were already prepared to have demonstrators show up literally that night doing the old hey, hey, ho, ho stuff. So we all know that this is organized protest, and so they already had advanced knowledge this was coming. And I guess the decision was to drop it now rather than some other time. I guess given how low the Democrats are in the polls, they felt this would help them out perhaps. And we don't know. That is the other big question, is what impact this will have on the election, is the other point that I'm raising. A lot of this, in my opinion, all had to do with timing. I was kind of hoping the decision would come down after the election myself, because then there would be a 2-year cooling off period when probably there'd be nothing the Democrats could really do about it, and that would leave us, maybe people would come to acceptance to see what the consequences really were. It wasn't as extreme as they thought, and on their side and our side, of course, wouldn't be as hopeful as people would want, and so we'd be left with kind of a situation where things maybe get back to normal in some ways, and I'm sure that various state laws and debates would occur, initiatives, and who knows what else, depending on the state. So that's kind of the way it is on that, and I doubt that this is going to change anybody's ultimate ruling. We don't know when the ruling was scheduled to come out anyhow. It may be one reason for the leak was maybe the leaker had found out they weren't going to release it until after the election and decided that they needed to get it out now. That's one possibility. The other possibility is, well, I don't know. I mean, they just decided to release it because they wanted to affect the decision. That's the other idea that's being thrown around. And I guess to the persons identified, we don't know what it is. It's most likely a clerk. Probably not one of the justices endorsed it, although you can't rule that out. I also have a question about, I don't know at all what the inner workings are in terms of clerical staff and IT staff at the court, for instance. And it's possible that one of these employees, who's a non-attorney, got a hold of it. Because attorney conceivably would be disbarred for this breach of ethics. But it could, if it's just an ordinary employee, probably they would just be fired, and they could probably go off to Silicon Valley or some, depending on, or go get some other job in favorable company or organization. So, at any rate, I just kind of runs through what I think about the subject. I guess there's a federal investigation has been launched on this, and I guess they'll do all the normal things of going through all the phone records and see who's been talking to Politico, and that sort of thing. The other thing obviously can be done is everybody who could have had access to it could be questioned by federal investigators and simply ask, are you the person that did it? And basically, they'll either have to commit a federal felony to deny it, or they'll have to invoke their right not to talk. Now, if everybody says I didn't do it except one person who invokes their right not to talk, then you pretty much have the person. You may not have proof, but you kind of know now. And you'll know who to focus all your other investigation on. If a clique is going to work together to protect that person, and several people say that invoke their rights, but they probably all didn't do it, then we'll have a whole different outrage going on at that point. Well, we'll see what happens. But I think it looks like that the days of Roe are now numbered. And, of course, the other aspect of this whole thing, and why I'm a little apprehensive, is, last year we came close to losing our country, basically. If all the Democrats had gone together and ended the filibuster and then passed all those bills that they wanted to pass once the filibuster was gone, with 50 votes or each and the vice president, they could have totally rigged the election system, legalized the kind of voter fraud that actually occurred in the 2020 election on a nationwide scale everywhere, totally taken away the states to protect voter integrity. They could then legalize any number of illegal aliens in the country they wanted to bring up their vote. Pass serious gun control measures potentially. I mean, there would have been a beginning of a totally different country. And fortunately, two senators on the Democrat side voted to sustain the filibuster. And so all this didn't happen, along with a gigantic spending bill, which would have driven inflation even to higher levels we already see. So that's why, even though this is a very important issue, in my opinion, after the election might have been a better time to drop some kind of bombshell like this. On the other hand, recent polls show that we're running about 50-50, or maybe even people that are more for banning abortion than against it. And so maybe with the Democrats going full-scale outrage on this thing, they may actually damage themselves, and this may even help ensure a big victory this time. So to the more religious folks, I guess you could say it's in the hands of God, so we'll see what happens. And to the less religious folks, we'll just have to see what, what happens. What at any rate, obviously, I think the fat is in the fire on this issue now, and I guess Obama's called for nationwide protests, although I don't know what that will really do. There's a few other possibilities, which I don't even want to mention. Just hope they don't happen. And, we just hope that the court comes through with this. We don't know when they were planning on releasing this. Usually it's a decision of this magnitude would usually be the last decision in late June before they go on their recess between the end of June and the beginning of October, right? That's their normal vacation period. And although they do, have decisions during that time, they usually don't have oral arguments and in-person meetings during that period, except maybe on the most extreme emergencies. So we don't know when they actually planned on releasing it, and it's possible that it was going to come out after either late June or maybe sometime after the election, I think. But we just don't know on that one. But anyway, I guess for the pro-life people, it really fundamentally is a major step forward. I guess there's finally going to get some action after years of trying to get a Supreme Court that would make that kind of decision. And of course, the Democrats have their own idea about packing the court too, and by increasing numbers of liberals. But again, if the filibuster holds, then that won't occur. And so far, it looks like Manchin I know he said he still hasn't changed his position on the filibuster. I don't think Ms. Sinema has either. And so far, so good. Well, I guess that's kind of it on this subject. And by the way, links to my social media addresses for the various, Twitter, Parler. I'm at the same one on all of them. So even the New Truth account, although I haven't got a whole lot of activity on that one yet, but we'll see how that pans out. And I'm kind of looking forward to when they finally get it on the computer. I'm more of a person that likes to work on a computer than on a small device, so I can work on the iPad and stuff like that. At any rate, so I'll close this for now, and until next time.